Boom.
Hello, hello, hello.
Just in time. Should I zoom in?
Oh,
Yeah.
you got all kinds of fancy effects and such. What's that about? Did not expect
Went with
that.
the purple light today.
I like that. I like that. You got like a mood lighting situation. You switch it up.
Because we're doing evening time.
Oh, yes, yes. Got a little ambiance.
Yeah, man.
I can dig it. I can dig it.
What's good, family? Facebook user.
All right. Hey,
What's up,
Jay.
AJ?
What's goody?
Happy Pumpkin Day.
Happy Pumpkin Day. Are you doing everything pumpkin right now? Are you like coffee and muffins? And is everything pumpkin in your town?
You know what, man? One of my favorite things is this pumpkin bread. This pumpkin spice bread. It's so good.
Yeah.
So
There's this pumpkin muffin with these little pepita seeds or some kind of seeds. Man, that's freaking delicious.
That sounds good.
Love it. And we didn't even coordinate that. Mike Reynolds, how about that?
I like that. I was thinking we should start coming on here with like full on suits, like Men in Black. You know what I mean? Lex Friedman type look.
I support it. Hey, listen, we appreciate y'all rocking with us on this new time. We trying this out. Like I said, we're going to figure it out. We're probably going to do, some Mondays, some Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and we'll work our way through and see what day of the week works best for you guys. But I think this evening thing could work, bro.
I think it could too, except for the strain that it puts on my family.
Well, there's that.
Outside of that, man, it's amazing. It's great.
Other than the discord in your family, how do you like the schedule, right?
See how much we love y'all? Y'all better tune in.
All right, that's what's up, Miguel. That's what I need to hear, man. Seriously, can you guys, whether it's a comment or a vote, score, but let us know, what does feel more comfortable. We were trying to catch you guys not quite dinner time, right? We don't want to disturb dinner. But midday can be tough. Folks are at work, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know. Let us know.
Yeah.
Mike Reynolds said,
Mike Reynolds says he's pumpkin spiced out. Ultimate disrespect when the old what? When they did the pumpkin spice Captain Crunch. Oh, pumpkin spice. Oh, okay.
Oh, that's yuck. Nah, that's too much, man.
Yeah. You know what, man? And Captain Crunch was my favorite cereal growing up.
No, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, bruh.
Well, that was my second one. That was when I got older. It was Captain Crunch up to probably about 14, 12 or 13. Then Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch is delicious. It's almost like dessert. Listen, happy Halloween, happy Monday, happy All Hallows Eve, happy, I think Dia de la Muerte.
What is that? What is
Isn't Dia de la Muerte the same day as Halloween?
I don't know.
If we have any Mexican viewers, let us know. The only thing I really know about Dia de la Muerte, Justin, is the movie Coco, which I love.
Yeah, Coco was a good movie.
Bro, we've seen that joint easily a dozen times, probably 20, 25. I'm not even exaggerating. Maybe more for real.
Yeah, I've never seen that, though.
The question, Christopher Campbell, was Dia de la Muerte.
I've seen Coco, yeah.
You said you have not seen it?
I mean, I have seen Coco. I have seen that.
Oh, yeah, you tripping if you haven't. Yeah, I just want to, it's not the same. Okay, AJ said it's not the same. Okay. Well, whatever it is that you may be celebrating today, we wish you well and hope that you do it in good health. Be careful out there. It's weirdos.
Yeah.
There's a lot of weirdos out there. So I think we're going to go do something, although we did like a trunk or treat over the weekend. So my son is maybe Halloweened out, but I think we're going to go do something. So we're going to get going and give you your evening back to do whatever that festivity is. But seriously, if this time works, let us know. We will be back. We will make a habit of the evenings, and maybe Monday does stick. I don't know. But thank you for rocking with us today. Oh, wait a minute. Now AJ said, wait, I might be wrong. Yeah, man. Do y'all do trunk or treat? And we'll get into this just real quick. Justin, do y'all do trunk or treat in your area?
Well, we do through the church. My wife actually put ours together. We had ours yesterday.
Okay.
So yeah, we did the trunk or treat. Our car was twist or treat. So she actually had a twister board in front of the car, and then like this whole sign or whatever said twist or treat, and then when the kids would come, they would have to spin the twister thing, and whatever color they got, she put candy on all the dots on the twister board, and then they would pick candy from the color that they spun. So like a little interactive.
I support it. It's a great idea. So yeah, whatever you guys do, be safe, have fun, all that jazz. Let's get into this thing tonight. We got our own boogeyman tonight, y'all. And the boogeyman that we want to talk about, the boogeyman that nobody else is talking about, is the tax assessor.
Yeah. Tax assessor.
Why is nobody talking about the boogeyman tax assessor, Justin?
Right. And so when we've been kind of researching, so guys, every week, Vince and I, we have these long conversations. We're passing news articles back and forth. We're trying to dig deep into certain things and try to figure out, well, is this a cultural topic we're going to talk about this week, or is it something that really is specific to real estate? Well, you guys know we've been predicting since, during the pandemic, where we expected things to go. Unfortunately, we were very, very right, in terms of interest rates and where things are going and potentially heading into, some believe, an environment that's as bad or worse than the 70s. But with all that being said, here are a couple other fears that we have, or one particular fear that we have going into what could be, a very strong market correction, whether you want to call it a recession or whatever the case may be. We do know that home pricing is being affected. I gave the whole thing that I said leading up to this point to kind of say that when Vince and I are passing things back, we're always looking for new things to talk about. And so one of the hard things has been finding something new that you guys, that we haven't already informed you about. And then we started to talk about something that Vince is going through with his property, and something that he and I started to think about with regard to, as prices start to decrease, what happens to property taxes?
Yeah.
And what are tax assessors across the country doing to adjust in an environment where the pricing is going down? So before we were in an environment where the prices were going up so fast, assessors were having a hard time keeping up. Well, some assessors, not all, but a lot, most. And now what happens when the pricing is going down? And what type of penalty are you, as an investor, a homeowner, someone who is really, concerned, maybe if you own multiple properties, what type of potential punishment you're going to face as a result of where the tax assessors are with their understanding of how to derive value?
Yeah, it's, listen, my pain is your gain, right? I'm happy to share my own personal woes as a context for this story. So the really short version is that we bought our house in 2017. Like any self-respecting real estate investor, I did not pay retail. I bought a junker, and, we did a bunch of work on it to get it tight and right. It's been a labor of love that frankly has taken quite a long time. Anyway, fast forward, city does a reassessment in 2018. We see our property taxes go up a lot. We're like, cool, fine. We did a bunch of work, whatever. It makes sense. It's deserved. But then we had some other work done during the pandemic, just very, very minor stuff. Still had some open permits. And a consultant comes and knocks on our door a couple months ago and says, hey, look, we need to come and take a look at the stuff that wasn't closed out during pandemic. We have a whole process. Town has hired a consultant. Can we come in and take a look? I'm like, cool, fine, whatever. And we haven't really done a whole lot since then. So I'm like, fine.
Sure. Come on in.
What?
I said, sure, come on in. Come on inside.
Yeah, I know. That first mistake. Anyway, moving on. So we're like, all right, cool. Come on in. Homeboy is in the house for like 10 minutes. Okay. Mm-hmm. Like 10 minutes, legit. Mm-hmm. Leaves. We don't hear nothing. Month goes by, 2 months go by. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks ago, I don't have it in here anymore. I get this green notice in the mail from the local tax assessor. Congratulations. your taxes are going up 35%.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Bruh, first of all,
he was walking through your house with a clipboard.
right, yeah.
He got. Oh,
That's
I see. He
nice.
got that.
I see you. Yep. Okay.
Oh, he got the big screen. Oh, he got the
yep,
85.
We're gonna get him.
Okay.
For that. So,
Well, he got 3 PlayStations. Okay.
not the PlayStation, bro. So in 10 minutes time, this dude goes through here and apparently reports back to whomever that, whatever he saw warranted, hosing Vince and his wife.
Oh, man.
Bro. So anyway, bro, I literally thought it was a mistake. I thought it was a mistake. I'm like, I reach out to our local council person who's in our ward. I'm like, hey, I think there's a misunderstanding, right? You guys just did a reval a couple years ago. It went up 50%. Now it's going up 35% more. That clearly is not right. Right?
Yeah.
So, hey, let's just put this all behind us, right? I'm like totally, I literally do not have my backup at all because I'm like, clearly this is a mistake.
Yeah.
Council person writes back, CC, I want to be careful here because this is ongoing. Whatever. Council person writes back, and says, and CC's the assessor, right? Hey, we know the Harrises, great. We're really active in our town.
AJ said the congratulations was mad disrespectful.
Mad disrespectful, son. Mad disrespectful. So anyway, fast forward, we do a lot of stuff here. Council person's like, hey, can you help them out? Tax assessor's like, no, actually that number's right. And I'm the one who has the discretion to say so. And, fight me. Basically is what he said. And so it turned into this whole thing, man. I want to turn the discussion back to the broader issue that's going on. But I mean, it was really, really jarring. Praise God. Listen, we're going to appeal. And there's a process that we're already starting to go through that. And, I feel pretty good about our chances based on what I have learned. And praise God, even if we don't win the appeal, it's doable, right? It's not the worst thing in the world. But that is a remarkable change. And the conversation that my wife and I have all the time is like, what if you don't have the time or, the work situation that will allow you to fight this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What if you can't go to tax court?
Right.
What if you are, intimidated by official letters and you just kind of get bullied by the town and somebody jacks your rates? And so anyway, we just started saying, Justin and I started having this conversation because, and again, I'm not, Lord knows, I'm praying, taxing mercies all over Justin and his project because he's also doing a big rehab on his house, a gorgeous house. And I'm praying that you don't have the same situation. But we started having this conversation because we were like,
my house is terrible.
Justin's house is so ugly inside.
Let me tell you, they try to come to my house the way they came to yours.
Just
I'm getting all the old clothes. We throwing everything on the floor.
Man, listen.
We gonna have dishes piled up.
Bruh. Dust bunnies all over the floor, family. Yeah. I'm telling you, don't have no light bulbs in the light sockets.
Yeah, man. I'm putting everything, cut old dusty car. What are you talking about? Covers over the furniture, everything.
All of that, bro. Do it all.
Yeah.
So it's just been a mess. But anyway, we started going. Clearly, this is happening everywhere, and the problem, as Justin stated in the open, is that we're now in an environment where prices are coming down, but property taxes don't have a clearing mechanism like markets do. Right? When the market decides that your house is not worth XYZ, the next buyer tells you that because the check is smaller, right? But property taxes are sticky.
Mm-hmm.
So we got this situation around the country where we've had this ridiculous run up in prices.
Yeah.
Often not really well founded. And you got property taxes that are sticky and a lot of folks that ain't going to be willing or able to fight these assessments. And I think it's going to push some people out their house.
Yeah. And so someone made the point about like gentrified communities. AJ, I think, made that. That this would happen in gentrified communities. We saw this like in DC when there was a lot of rehabbing happening in specifically, and we've talked about this on the show before, like that area, the Capitol Hill area,
Yeah.
The area that became Capitol Hill Extended, that used to be called Trinidad. And then a lot of folks start to get pushed out because of the taxes, even if they've owned these properties in their families for a long time.
Yeah.
Now, we've seen that, right? But what we also see is specifically now, and this is one of the things I want to talk to you about, Vince, is this whole appeal system with regard to how you basically appeal like an assessment. Number one is extraordinarily hard for the average person because there's all types of hoops that you've got to jump through. Usually there's a date that's not published anywhere.
Correct.
That you miss, right? And then you have to, either A, you're intimidated because sometimes you're not just going up against the county assessor, you're going against an attorney that they hired as well.
That's right.
Right. And then there's sometimes this back and forth that they're actually going to what's the word when you're questioning somebody?
Oh, they cross. There is cross.
Right. The cross-examination. Yeah. Right. So then there's this whole cross-examination that not only they do to you, but you then have to turn around and do to them. And you're not trained in this.
That's right.
Like, this isn't something that you've gone to school unless you are an attorney. Right. But here's the other thing too, Vince, is assessor departments across the United States are trying to get to a point where appeals are virtually obsolete. And they're doing this through technology, through machine learning. So there is a huge push for assessors across the United States to get to a point where they have advanced machine learning models to value properties. And you're seeing more and more counties hiring data scientists, hiring data teams, because they're thinking, you know what, we're already losing so much because of this appeal, for those who do appeal, because maybe they've had an unfair assessment. But even the process itself is costly, that if we can save money there, let's hire 4 or 5 data engineers. Right. And some data scientists. So that's what we're seeing more. And what's interesting is I started to study how the assessors are actually approaching valuation. I started to learn a lot more about why certain indicators are important, even from a not just comparable sales and how we do AVMs and all that, but why even the hedge funds chose certain characteristics with how they value property, like flood zone.
Yeah.
And I can get a little bit deeper into that a little bit later.
Yeah, I'm personally curious to hear more about that, and maybe I think we should weave that in throughout. But I'm personally very interested in that. I think, man, what's fascinating, and so I went back and looked at a bunch of stuff during the great financial crisis, GFC as we call it, right? And and this hunch that I had actually was borne out, and what you basically saw happen was as prices came down, you did not see a commensurate drop in property taxes. And I'm not prepared to say, I haven't done the research to say that it's because people were intimidated and didn't fight the appeals hard. Like, I don't know exactly, but there is data. I found multiple research reports that showed that during GFC, obviously prices cratered, right? You did not see a similar cratering in property tax collection. And that's what I'm afraid of here, right? Because just think about it on a practical level. You're prepared for principal and interest, PITI. You're prepared for repairs. You're prepared for, you may even have a slush fund for emergency, this, that, and the other. How many people talk about, I got to put away another 30%, right? For the possibility that my taxes might go crazy. Right. People don't think like that. For all of this talk that we hear about the Fed, and the Fed is obviously, the biggest, sort of finger on the scale in terms of housing affordability, but you just don't hear people talking about, well, your monthly really might be more impacted by your tax assessment next year.
And I tell you who else doesn't take it into account very, very often are underwriters, mortgage underwriters. And so we're kind of moving into this environment, right, where people are not going to sell their home. So Vince, you told me a stat earlier today, right? When we were kind of discussing the topic, and you said 85% of all mortgages are at a rate of 4% or below. Was that the stat that you gave?
That's right. That's exactly it.
Okay, so you said that, and one of the things that we started to think about as a result of this is, even if pricing starts to go down in the market, even if we start to see a decline in prices, we're not necessarily going to see a huge bump in inventory. Now, there's going to be some natural movement, people who have to move because of jobs and so forth, or aging of our population. We're seeing a lot of folks maybe who are in their, early 60s, mid 60s, late, early 70s, who are moving to active adult communities or communities where there is, some type of skilled nursing facility, so to speak, right? So these are natural moves that are going to happen. But by and large, 85% of the population who've secured these types of mortgages in a high rate environment, they're not going to sell their home.
That's right.
Right? Especially if they're locked in 15 to 30 years. And the majority of loans that were originated, and especially refis that were originated as a result of the low interest rates, were fixed rate mortgages, 15-year to 30-year mortgages. So they're just not going to move. So what does that mean then? That there's not as many homes available. And if there's not as many homes available, even though people are calling for a huge correction, even though people are calling for a huge potential housing crash, you won't feel it or realize it if people don't move.
Right.
Right. So that means then that potentially assessed market value, or assessors could continually value properties as artificially high.
Yeah.
Right. So then if I'm losing my job, if we're in this new world with high inflation, it's harder for me to make ends meet. And now you just spiked my property tax up and increased my housing payment by $500 a month or $200 a month. I may not have the means in order to afford it. So could this lead to even more foreclosures?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just to stay on that stat for a quick second, I mean, that stat is really staggering, right? And it's in the journal if anybody wants to go and see that stat. In fact, I may be able to pull it up real quick. But what they basically said is that 90%, you're right, this is crazy. 90% of every first lien mortgage in this country is under 5% as the interest rate, but 85% of them are below 4%. So again, why does anybody move? Why do you ever give that mortgage up, right? And that's the standoff that we're seeing, is that sellers are like, what? 3% mortgage? I'm never selling this house, right? But it provides, and I hadn't really thought of it in the way that you just said, Justin, it provides, I don't know, it almost anchors that tax assessment.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, even the most advanced assessor office, right? And they've got data engineers and they've got computers, or data scientists and the like. At the end of the day, if the data's not changing, well, even their values are going to end up being stagnant because there just isn't that much change, right? So at the end of the day, every single predictive model is making a prediction based on the past, right? It's making a prediction based on, say, the last 7 years of sales or the last 5 years of sales. And they try to bring in other factors that sort of lead to value. And I would love to get into some of these factors so people are more aware of some things, especially when we're looking at AVMs in the future. If you are a real estate investor, a wholesaler, and you or a wholesaler, and you care about like AVM, especially in this new market where you're going to have to get your AVMs right.
Yeah.
But not only are you going to have to get them right, you're going to have to start thinking about the other things that lead to value. We're going to give you the secrets. We're going to let you know what all those what those indicators are that lead to value that not only assessors are looking at, but buyers, especially institutional buyers, are looking at that lead to these. But what you'll find is what I'm saying, regardless of what these things, what these attributes are, people aren't going to be selling their homes. Yeah. And if that's the case, all you can do is go off of what the latest sale was and what the history was, and there isn't going to be that much movement. Therefore, pricing will potentially stay artificially high.
Yeah.
Or so valuations, I should say.
Correct. That's right. So to this point that Miguel brings up, AVM, somebody asked the question, is an automated valuation model. It's something that a robot did, a machine did, not a person. That's all that means, AVM. So to this question that Miguel brings up, he says, sounds like there needs to be a push to have a cap on how much taxes could adjust per year, especially in states that have caps on rent increases. This is a great point. So check this out. There are some states that have them For example, I think Texas is one. But let me just show you, because I want to make this really, really tangible and concrete for people. This isn't a Vince problem. This isn't a Justin problem. Even though we are both. No, Justin's not, because Justin's house looks terrible. It is a really, really.
My house is so
so
ugly and
my
bad.
God. I mean, you're the only person I know who lowered their value by doing
There's
the
no
rehab.
way that thing would even sell.
Right. But seriously, like, this is something that's going on nationwide. This is a big, big problem. And so there's a bunch of articles out there, specifically in Texas and in towns like Austin. And check this out. This is I think this might have been in a local thing, a local publication. Yeah, it is. But they got realtors saying stuff like this. I've never seen anything like this. Right? Realtors are saying they literally have never seen anything like this. They're cautioning dramatic tax bill hikes for new homeowners.
Oh, wow. You know what, Vince? And that's such an incredible point. And I don't know if this is where you're headed. But, like, for the past year, you and I have been talking a lot about what new homeowners had to do in this last market to even get into a property.
Yeah.
In order to compete. And a lot of them overpaid. And a lot of them had to get almost basically 100% financing. Right? Because they couldn't compete with the people that had the cash. Therefore, they had to artificially raise the price in order to get to a point where they could actually compete and someone would be willing to sell to them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I want to be solution based, man. And actually, I do have some solutions. I don't want this to be super doom and gloom, but it's just that I don't hear anybody talking about it for it to be as big of a deal as it is. But I mean, after a while, I was like just tripping over stories. Like, they were everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And to get back to Miguel for a quick second, there are some places that have caps, but even there, you got to be careful because they might not kick in until the next tax year. Right. So in Texas, I think that they have a 10% cap. And if there's any Texans who are watching, please keep me honest, jump in the comments and please tell me if you know better. But a lot of places don't have caps. New Jersey doesn't have a cap.
Right.
I asked.
Right. AJ just said Maryland doesn't have a cap.
Yeah. Maryland, no cap. And I think most states, municipalities don't have a cap. I think there's fewer that do.
No,
and
most of them don't. Yeah.
You think?
Yeah, most of them do not.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I think most of them do not have a cap. So to think solution-wise for a quick second before I want to go to the next subset of this issue, I'd be doing some research on places that do not have these caps.
Right.
Because there are people, like in these stories that you have me showing, there are people who are having 15, 20, 30, 40% tax increases.
Right.
Right.
It's interesting. And being able to, it's so funny because, what you just said, right? That's a new, and it's hard, right? Because we're not talking about taking advantage of people, but we are talking about helping people who get into a point of distress.
Yeah.
Because they are it will happen. And so to the extent that we can help people who are going through this, you're going to see, I think, a lot of folks going after exactly what Vince is saying, which is properties that have experienced a high increase in property tax valuation or assessed value from last year. Right. Who, especially for new homeowners, like if I've purchased my house in the last year and then I experienced year over year of 30 or 40 or 50% increase in my valuation, my assessed value, these are people who potentially may need help.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it goes without saying, but let me also point to another market where this is really, really relevant. This Bloomberg article. This thing is heartbreaking. I'll put the link in the comments for you guys. But so it actually goes right to this comment that somebody just dropped in there. Actually, it says,
oh, Anthony says Maryland does.
Oh, I think he's saying they do have a cap.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah. If they make, so Facebook user, I think that's Miguel. Miguel, is that? No, Miguel's already in here now. Now we can see him. So I'm not sure who this Facebook user is. But they said if they make repairs unpermitted, wouldn't they be subject to a code enforcement violation? And that's a double whammy. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And what some people end up doing.
Well, they won't get caught until they sell.
What?
They probably won't get caught until they sell.
Right. Correct. That's what usually ends up happening.
Yeah.
Is folks will, do the repairs kind of under the table. First of all, I'm not advocating that. I wouldn't do that. I did not do that. But our repairs are too big that even if I was inclined to, frankly, it wasn't gonna work. I had to pull permits. So everything that we did in this house is permitted. But that's why I was so upset, because I'm like, bro, you already got me for a huge increase when I first did all this work.
Right.
Anyway, moving on. This is another one. If you care to read this article in Bloomberg, New York City's property taxes are crushing homeowners. This thing is literally heartbreaking, bro. I'm not going to go through. It's a bunch of different vignettes of people and their specific stories. But this woman here, which hopefully you guys can see, she's with her son who has some special needs. She's an attorney, has not made any repairs to her house, Justin. But because things in the area are getting renovated, she said every year she ends up getting an increase in her taxes. And so she's at the point now where even though she hasn't done any rehab, she had gotten an appraisal for $940. Tax assessor came in and called it $1.5 million.
Oh my gosh.
She was like, what? Where are you getting this from? Right? She has to go to court, which means hiring an attorney. She's an attorney herself, and she was intimidated, Justin, to your point.
I bet. You know what's crazy is the fact that this whole thing of being taxed on unrealized value is crazy to me.
Yeah.
Right? Because if say for the past 3 years, right, she's been paying at 1.5 million, and then usually at a rate against the value of 1.5 million, then recession hits, properties decrease dramatically, and it's usually those $1 million plus properties that have the biggest decrease in price. So let's say she goes down to, $750, which is not insane if you look at what happened back in 2007, 8, and 9, right? And then she sells her home. She ends up selling her home at $750, but paid at a rate of 1.5 for years.
That perfect point. That's exactly
right. And you don't get reimbursed for that.
That's right. How, Sway?
Right. How? And the just logically.
Right.
Right. When you look at if you base your tax assessment or your how you tax properties against this really an arbitrary number, right? That's fair. It's fairly arbitrary, even if you have machine models. And I get that you can kind of say, all right, we can do some type of regression analysis, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's still an arbitrary number because it's not realized.
Yeah.
It's not a real number until someone actually pays that amount. So how does the tax structure, the cost structure of the county change because the values of the properties have increased or decreased? Does it cost more to run the schools? Does it cost more to hire labor for the streets? I mean, maybe you could make an argument that maybe, that if housing has increased dramatically, maybe people expect to be paid a little bit more. And it says something about the economy or the local economy, but really? To that extent?
Yeah. It feels out of whack to me. Listen, I get it. If you are a municipality and everybody in your town buys a house and stays there for 40 years, then, you're locked into 1970s. Oh, cool. I get it. But that's not how people live.
Right.
Right. People stay in houses on average. I think it's like 7.5 years now or something like that.
Right. Maybe.
So if the stock is turning, then upon realization, isn't that when it makes sense? Right.
Right. Yeah. Because they even made this argument around, I think the Biden administration potentially was looking at changes to how I think it was around cryptocurrency, about potentially taxing cryptocurrency, but taxing it based on the value of the crypto, or even maybe they were looking at stocks as well too, Vince. Potentially, and there was some talk about potentially taxing people based on their tax portfolio and the value of their tax portfolio.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people came out and said, that makes no sense.
And that is why I am highlighting this comment and pointing out once again that we have the smartest, best looking viewers and audience in all of the internet. Because as AJ said, there would be riots in the streets.
It'd be riots in the streets. See, there you go. Great minds. AJ was already there. He was already there.
Riots, bruh.
Riots.
Can
Because
you
go ahead.
imagine?
Yeah. It'd be nuts. Because, I mean, AJ, do you remember when they were having this conversation? Maybe about 6 or 7 months ago. I think we talked about it a little bit on the show, but we didn't really go deep into it. But yes, you're right. There would be riots, but we do the same thing for houses.
Right.
What sense does that make?
Bruh. Wall Street would be like, what? Come again? Say what? Huh? What? you no. They would not be having it. It's so flawed as to just literally not make any sense whatsoever. So I don't know how you fix this underlying issue. I mean, this feels structural, but I do think that this is going to be one of those things that has fallout way bigger than anybody is talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm going to drop the link in here, but you go through this Bloomberg article, it is heartbreaking. People who have not done a thing to their house.
Right.
Joint just keeps climbing. Oh, and by the way, since your tax assessment went up, guess what? Your HOA just went up.
Right.
Because that's based on property value, a lot of places.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you got families who are like, bruh, I didn't do anything. I certainly didn't do anything wrong.
And not only did I not do anything, you haven't done anything.
Right.
You've done nothing different. You didn't invest more money in the schools. You didn't invest more money in the streets. Your infrastructure hasn't changed.
Yeah.
So where's the money going?
Yeah. Yeah. It's I think it's a fundamental issue. And so, you know, again, trying to be solution oriented. If I'm you guys, if I'm watching this episode, if I'm listening to it, I would be looking for places that have obviously places who have had crazy run up because, you know, they're likely to have a fall, but specifically people who do not have this cap that we're talking about. I did not find a good resource that kind of lays them all out. I found them kind of onesie twosie. I will look. And if you guys in the audience, if you find a resource that lays out what cities and states, or what states rather, have caps versus those that don't, let us know. Because a lot of those people are going to be in a world of hurt.
Now, what about the other side of the argument, Vince, that says, well, you know, the people who live in the most expensive homes likely have greater income, therefore they're the ones who should pay the highest taxes?
Man, I believe that people should pay their fair share. I think that if you are blessed, you know, you owe it to the larger society to give back. I am not anti-tax by any stretch. It just needs to make sense to me, bro. It just needs to make sense. And let me, if I can be like, not to, again, personalize things too much, but like, there is a group of folks of which I think you would consider yourself a part as well, Justin. Like they call it the mass affluent. Like that's the technical term for it.
I'm not part of that group.
Except that your house looks terrible.
That's right.
So,
all county assessors, if you're listening, I am not part of that group.
Yeah, when I say mass affluent, I'm not talking about the house. The house looks terrible. House looks totally crazy. But seriously, like there's a group of folks who, and I'm not asking nobody to like cry for us or whatever, like blessed and highly favored. But there is a group of folks who are doing better than average, are not wealthy, and they are just getting crushed.
Yeah.
Getting crushed. Governor Murphy here in New Jersey, because New Jersey also does not have a homestead exemption, which would help some places. Like if there's a homestead exemption, you can take some of that assessment off the rip. We don't have that here. And because our taxes are so high, that SALT bill that passed also adversely hurt us. Anyway, but the point that I was going to make is that Governor Murphy proposed to do something earlier this year that would give some rebates back to people, but it caps you out if the household makes 250. So, you know, if you don't qualify for that, it's like, would you rather not make that? No, of course not. But there's a lot of people who are getting squeezed who may not be the most sympathetic out there in the country at large, and I get that. But the pain is real. It's real. It's real.
Right. Yeah, man. I would say if you know, I wonder if people kind of rose up in the way that AJ was saying and started filing, you know, like class action lawsuits, or at least started to get together and say, hey, you know, we kind of need to look at the way that this is sort of structured. But, you know, the answer, of course, as you just said, isn't that easy? Because, you know, we do need to pay taxes. We do need to invest in the infrastructure of our towns and our counties and our municipalities. And I agree with that 100%. But to the point about, you know, Philadelphia, if you've dramatically increased based on value and recent sales, and I haven't sold my home, and now you've doubled, you know, what your intake is across the county, how, you know, what responsibility does the county then to provide some level of transparency as to how this new windfall is being appropriated, right? You know, so that's the piece that I'm not seeing accountability in the other direction. Now, what happens when when values start to decline and assessments start to decline? You know, what's going to be the response then? Because they're going to be hanging on to these values for as long as they can.
Absolutely. For dear life.
Yeah. And now you may say there are counties where they're kind of moving to more or greater transparency because it's all machine learning based. We're trying to get rid of the bias. We're trying to, you know, we're letting everyone know exactly how we're evaluating these properties. We want to get to a point where nobody even has to appeal because we just trust the models, right? Now, there are some problems with these models. There's some properties that can easily predict value, but you know, the properties that are hardest and the areas that are hardest to predict, Vince, the areas that we're in.
Yeah, right.
Why?
Yeah.
Right?
The variability of housing stock.
Because exactly the variability. And so the term there is, you know, basically the homes are heterogeneous, right? So basically what's happening is there's a high, especially in a neighborhood like where Vince lives, where you've got, you know, older homes where people are rehabbing. And so you can have a house that, you know, probably would sell for $700,000-800,000. I'm not saying your specific neighborhood, Vince, but let's just say I'm in a neighborhood where, homes would sell for $700,000 or $800,000 for fully rehabbed, but right next to it is a property that would sell for maybe a third of that or a fourth of that, you know, a quarter, you know, maybe, you know, $250,000 or something like that. Those properties, but it are extraordinarily hard for models to predict. Yeah. Why? Because if you look at it, the only thing that I would see, they're both built in 1930. They both have 3-bedroom or 4 bedrooms and 2 baths. They're both 1,500 square feet. But it's really hard for these models to account for condition. It's really hard for them to understand the characteristics of your property unless they send somebody to your house and knock on your door and see how many PlayStations you got and your 85-inch TV.
And if you dumb like me and you let them in,
right.
Come on in.
Right.
Hey, buddy. Right.
And you know what they do? They go back to the lab and they do a special assessment. They do a you know, what's the word that I'm looking for? You know, it's not standard. Basically, they got to take your you know what they found in your data, and apply it just to your house and try to come up with maybe a manual assessment as a result of what they found, because the models can't account for characteristics inside the property, like property condition. It's really tough. You know, and so what ends up happening is that without that, I'll tell you what the assessors won't do, or what they typically don't do. The good ones do. I'm not saying, but a lot of them won't. It's, Vince, they should take your house out of how they figure out value for the rest of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right? Like your house should no longer be considered. It should be pulled out in terms of that, because what happens is then now you get this averaging bias.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Well, you know what my biggest beef was, that I'm on the phone with them and I'm going, can you tell me how you got to this number? oh, well, we have a process that, cool, fine. I'm not even saying you're wrong. Not at this point, I'm not. Can you just tell me how you got there? Well,
Right.
everybody knows that da. Everybody knows.
Who's everybody?
Who is everybody? What
Right. I don't know.
Are we in 8th grade? What are you talking about? Everybody knows. And so just the lack of transparency is really what got my back up. And that's when it was a whole lot more bass in my voice for the rest of the conversation. Because I was like, y'all are winging it.
Right.
You figuring this out as you go. Right. And the fact that municipalities aren't forced to be really, really explicit about how they arrive at these numbers, given the impact that we're talking about, I think is criminal.
Yeah, and the thing is that they don't really have a way of doing like these types of one-off processes, right? Because basically, they in modeling you would call it like an exemption, right? So it would be like an exemption based on, your home improvements. And there's certain things that make it really hard for a lot of the machine learning models to try to figure out what properties are, and especially in areas where you have extreme sales, where the property right next to it sold for $500,000-$600,000 more because it was fully rehabbed, right? So and there's ways of trying to get there, but the models just aren't there yet. So this idea that they're going to get to a point where there really isn't any type of real bias inherent. There's always going to be areas where we are as investors and people who are flipping properties, you are naturally going to be in an area where these models typically really don't work. And there's a high probability that properties in those areas are going to be overvalued or overtaxed, right? And this could be a way that you start thinking about, like, where there's a high concentration of investors, there's a high probability that there's more people in that area that are going to be needing your services from either because they're looking to move, but they're having a hard time keeping up with payments because because of the increase that they've had to encounter as a result of this, or B, you can go in with some financial services and really try to help these people and maybe even counteract and help them appeal some of these decisions. Right. And become like a trusted resource in that area, in that neighborhood. And they'll start sending you deals because you helped them.
100%. 100%. So God, there was I was going to go a different place, but let me go another sort of solution oriented place. Cause I said I was going to let you guys, get your Halloween evening back. And again, we're just sort of testing out this time. So I don't want to, we only have strain people's patience, but what'd you say, Just?
I said, yeah, we only have a few more minutes because you and I both got to get to places.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So before we wrap real quick, let me just go over this one thing, which is that the other opportunity that I see in this environment is because you've got this stalemate. So I came up with this phrase, I'm calling it the great stalemate, right? You got sellers who were like, why would I ever give up a 3% mortgage? Right? I'm just going to stay pat. And you got buyers who are like, why would I ever take on a 7% mortgage? I'll just keep renting, right? And so you've got this stalemate that's happening in the market. But what you are also starting to see that is an opportunity for you is there is a record jump in mortgage assumptions. And we haven't seen that in 20, 30 years because the interest rate environment didn't justify it, right? If rates are steadily going down, it just always makes more sense to get the newest prevailing rate. But what you are starting to see is more and more mortgage assumptions. I think the stat that I saw was the highest rate that they've been in 20 or 25 years. And again, I'll find you a link. But if you guys are not familiar with how mortgage assumptions work, they're exactly what they sound like. You can take over somebody's mortgage. And it's the whole idea. It's kind of like, the whole sub-2 boom, the idea of taking over somebody's mortgage. But this is the way to do it without having to do one of those to the bank, right? Mm-hmm. And sub-2s are perfectly legal, don't get me wrong, but there is a clause in the mortgage that says that if they find out that somebody else is on the deed, they have the right to accelerate, like when you put it in trust and go through the sub-2 process. Mm-hmm. An assumable mortgage just says that...
And by accelerate, just if anyone doesn't understand what that means, you want to define it or you want me to?
Yeah, exactly. I run me my bread. I got to get it all now, right?
Right, I need all my money now. Yeah. So I'm accelerate and you owe everything now. Basically, the mortgage is over. Send me all the bread.
Exactly right. So that's always a risk. with sub 2. You can mitigate it, but it is a risk. Assumable mortgages, the bank is hip to everything that's going on. Now, you have to qualify most of the time, but you can just step into that 3% mortgage, and they're seeing a record.
So Vince, question. So did your research kind of turn up how many of the mortgages that have been originated in the past 5 years, what percentage of them are assumable?
I have not, but it's actually a conversation I wanted to have with you because I want us to publish that data for people.
Yeah.
Because there are certain types of mortgages, and we have the data on it. Depends on who the investor is, USDA, Fannie, whomever. And I want us to publish that for people.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to see more and more. I agree with you in this type of environment, people who are going to want to assume mortgages. But that also means that they have to have cash.
It does, but you think about how it could be. It's just one tool, y'all. It's not a cure-all, but it's one tool in your tool belt. If you can walk somebody through that transaction, or if you yourself want to buy the house, how about you buy the house and buy the mortgage too?
Yeah.
Right? And then that way, maybe you can give the seller the price tag that they want or something much closer to it.
Right.
Because you're getting that beautiful mortgage and that beautiful payment along with it. And so these are the kinds of things that you guys are going to have to really start to think about is how can I get creative? How do I get people unstuck? Because right now, both sellers feel stuck and buyers feel stuck.
So Vince, we're running out of time, but I wanted to go through a little bit about what are the attributes that a lot of the machine learning models use in order to evaluate property. And I think it's really important for people who are going to be, as we say, AVMs become more important. These are some of the things. And I have a list here of what are the most important attributes or characteristics that lead to value. Perfect. The number one. And so when you're doing comps, these are the number one things that you want to look at. So number one, you know what number one is, Vince? You have a guess?
Is it not square footage?
It's not square footage.
Okay.
Square footage is really, really low on the list.
Interesting.
Number one is neighborhood.
Okay.
So if you're looking at property and you're looking at, the value of a house, you need to make sure that they're within the same neighborhood. And when I say neighborhood, I'm talking about like census tract. I'm talking about the neighborhood as defined, the neighborhood that is defined by the census. And in data, we call it neighborhood ID. So guess what we've done, Vince?
What did we do now?
We've added neighborhoods and neighborhood ID to our data. This is number one. Vince, ask me what's the number two. What's number two?
What's the number two thing?
Take a guess.
Is that square foot? No, he says low. So I'm gonna say neighborhood, then probably, man, I don't know now. Is it lot size?
High school district.
High school district schools. That makes total sense.
High school district. And then I'll give you a hint. Number three. Well, I'll just tell you. Elementary school district.
Elementary school.
High school is more important than elementary. High school, then elementary. So right, and so basically the rating. So guess what we've done, Vince?
Let me see. Do we have school data now?
We've added school data.
We've added school data.
We have added school data because it is the number two indicator in how you evaluate property value.
Yeah.
We have just added that.
Yeah.
All right. Now, here's the third one, and we are in the process of adding this one. Okay. Here's the third most important thing. Okay. Well, I will say there is kind of like a 3A, which is town, right? But I'm kind of putting neighborhood and town as the same, but neighborhood and then town also kind of work hand in hand. But in terms of like distinct thing, here's the next most important thing is in terms of determining value. It is the median income for the neighborhood. And I'm talking about the median income as reported on the census. So you can, and the interesting thing about median income is that if you know the median income of where your property resides for the census tract that it's in, it kind of speaks a lot to, people's willingness to pay higher value, right? There's a lot that's inherent in that income number. Yeah. So it kind of tells you a lot, like there's a lot of things that you don't even have to figure out if you just look at the median income.
Yeah.
Right. Because
that actually,
right. And
there
should
should be a feedback loop there to the education rankings.
In a way, which is interesting though, because I would have thought, right, that median income would have had less weight in terms of value, in terms of determining if it was already including schools. But what's interesting is that it didn't. Right. So there's enough variation between the value that median income can bring in terms of predicting value, in addition to knowing the school ratings as well. Yeah. So I thought that was really, really, really interesting.
That's huge.
Yeah, so it is huge. And I'll give you guys a couple other things. The next thing is what Vince said, which is square feet. Mm-hmm. So square footage does come in. Then what's interesting is tax rate. But tax rate also kind of goes into the affluency of the neighborhood and the assessed value, that sort of thing. So, but then after that, bathrooms, and then bedrooms, time of sale, and then the age of the property.
Yeah, I mean, what AJ has just done right here, this is the work, right? I was on a webinar with Caesar Pena, Flippin' and Jay Caesar, and we were going through exactly this exercise, AJ, is getting to the place of thinking, okay, how do I mix and match attributes of a property or neighborhood to find people who may be going through something like what Justin and Vince have described, right? House is less than 5 years old. Property taxes are way up, but then also this and da-da. And you can mix and match. And that's what Justin is getting at, is the ability for you guys to mix and match and Rubik's Cube these data points however you need to get to the particular story of the type of people that you want to help.
That's right. And what's interesting is that, Vince, so one of the things that I think out of this conversation, we should start to calculate and bring into our data is percentage increase, like assessed value percentage increase.
Yeah.
And that'd be pretty easy for us to actually start bringing into our data so that people can actually search by that value in the data and build lists based on it.
Yeah.
On the new changes made to the list builder on reiskip.com.
Absolutely. Bing. No, but seriously, guys. So look, I know we're over time, but I think that breakdown is hugely helpful because, again, what Justin is describing to you is the way that you make it actionable.
Yeah.
These stories are cool and informative, right? And now you know a little bit more about how the world works, but what do you do tomorrow? How do you go and find people who are experiencing this pain? How do you find neighborhoods that are experiencing this phenomenon that we're talking about with the news story? So I'm glad you went through that. That's huge. And
now, one last thing that I didn't add is flood zone. Flood zone is an indicator in here, but primarily flood zone is an indicator, not necessarily towards value, but towards if you are in a house that is in a flood zone, you are already paying high insurance. So if you have a flood zone property and you've experienced an increase in sales because you're in a neighborhood that's got great schools and everything else, and you've already got this really high insurance payment as a result of living in a flood zone, like I would add to AJ's algorithm. I'll call it the AJ algorithm that he just gave as to how to identify properties that potentially should go after. You may even want to add to that. Let me also look at properties that are in a flood zone. Now, we've also added flood zone data to our data. Now, we're going to be making all this available. And it's so funny how this kind of worked out and turned out, because we were already adding these things before we even did a lot of this research. This isn't really a pitch for REI Skip, but since we do own it, we might as well pitch it, which is we are going to be adding these indicators so that you can search by these values in REI Skip. Jose the Lion is actually working on bringing neighborhood into REI Skip, where you can build lists based on neighborhood in REI Skip right now. We're also working on some things with a notable influencer who is coming out with a course very soon on how to bring properties to institutional buyers. And if you come through his course, we're also going to allow you to build lists, bringing in this school data as well. And we'll be releasing that because he's going to come on the show probably next week or the week after and talk about what we're doing with him. But again, and then we're going to be adding median income so that you can also search by that or at least see that in the data. We've already got all the other stuff, but we're going to add that new indicator, which is increase in assessed value, so that and then also make that searchable in REI Skip and then also in the mobile app as well.
Yeah. And that's a lot of value, bro.
Yeah, I mean, as we learn, guys, we're really paying attention to like what things are doing, and as a result of that, what we want to do is as we learn, we bring it to the data, and it's not about necessarily. I mean, look, we're all entrepreneurs, so yeah, we want to make money, yeah, but we don't want to take advantage of you. We want to help you, so we're trying to keep our prices as low as possible. It's one of the reasons we don't have 100 employees. You know what I mean? So that we can keep prices really low, but bring just as much value, but really, I believe more value than any other data provider out there who's focused on real estate investors, wholesalers, and anyone else who's interested in property data.
Yeah, 100%. All I can say to that is,
Jam.
I mean, that feels appropriate.
Jam. Let's go, bro. I got 20 minutes to get to where I got to get. Man.
So this is what we're going to do. We're going to drop one of Clues bombs for Justin and the whole engineering team, Jose the Lion, Young Lucas, for bringing all of this stuff into the system so that, again, it's actionable for you. AJ, I see your note. Yep, I'm going to hit you on the DM for sure. And, guys, I hope that this is helpful. We will continue to follow this story. It's not going anywhere. I think it's only going to get worse, frankly. I, again, don't believe we're going to see the kind of recession, the kind of fallout that we saw last time. But you are going to see transactions fall off a cliff. They already have. And you're going to see people losing houses for other reasons, things like this, like that monthly just, is hitting them in the gut. So, if you can help some of these folks help them and make some money along the way, that's the name of the game. So I think that's all I got. We're, like I said, a little bit over time. It's Halloween. Please get out there, enjoy, with your littles or whomever you're going out to trick or treat with, but be safe. And I don't know what day we're going to do next, but it will be a weekday and it will be a night. Is this cool? Did people kind of dig this 5 o'clock time frame? Maybe we'll try a different day, but does this work for people? Like, hop in the comments, give me a 1 if this is cool with people. But we'll keep experimenting with it. But, until then, don't punt on the weekday. I don't know. We got to come up with a new catchphrase now.
Yeah.
We got to come up with a new catchphrase now. But listen, guys, we appreciate you. We love you. Thank you for rocking with us. Thank you for your flexibility. Anything else, Just, before we get out?
Love y'all.
Love you. Y'all be good.
Peace.
We out.